Joseph had a lot to worry about. The woman that he was engaged to was pregnant, and he didn't know how this happened. And even when the angel said to Joseph, "Do not be afraid," he's still faced with a decision. We know from the scriptures that he's called righteous or law-abiding, or he's a just man. And so rather than bring public shame on Mary, he chooses to quietly divorce Mary rather than to humiliate her. And in just that moment, we get a glimpse of the grace of God through Joseph. He chooses Mary, and then he chooses to believe the message from God rather than pay retribution for something he may not even fully understand. Joseph chooses not to worry. Dr. Marcia McPhee, who has written our Angel series for this season, writes that the opposite of joy that comes from fear is worry. That worry is the illusion that we can somehow prevent tomorrow's heartache. That when we live in worry, we don't live in the present, but we keep our minds occupied with the worry about what may or may not happen in the future. And when we spend so much of our lives worrying, we often miss the joy of what is occurring in our lives right here and now. And we miss the opportunity to be fully present with others and to give them our attention and support because we're too busy worrying. And when we're robbed of joy, it's difficult to create more joy in the world. We don't hear a whole lot about Joseph in the scriptures, but when we hear this story each year, I'm reminded that, like Mary, Joseph chooses to accept the word from God. Joseph chooses to open his heart and life to welcome the child that Mary is carrying. Joseph opens his home and his whole future to this interruption of the divine of God, who gives him a message of hope for the world. How do we, like Joseph, open our hearts to the divine breaking in surprising ways? How might we, like Joseph, open our hearts to practice hospitality at this time of the year? Where may the Spirit of God be interrupting our lives? And are we ready? Are we ready to receive that news? And when we do hear that news, do we choose to worry about it? Do we choose to worry about it? Or do we choose to trust that God may be working, even through you, even through me? This is a time of the year when we move towards the darkest day of the year, the darkest night. In Advent, there is this growing and gathering darkness that leads to winter. But for us as people of faith, it's not a time to dwell in the darkness. This is not a time for worry. This is a time of hope. A hope so strong that Joseph chooses to overcome the expectations of his society, of his day. Joseph, in hope, follows a different path that prepares the world for love. Can we do the same? Thanks be to God. Amen.